With powerful stories from the years when drug use exploded in Britain. From the outset, the programme contains some very strong language.
Over the last 50 years, Britain has become a drug supermarket. With so much choice and availability, drug taking has become part of everyday life. Street drugs used to belong to a shadowy world on the fringes of society. Gradually, the barriers disappeared. Abuse became use. Hard became soft. Popping, dropping, smoking, snorting. For the recreational drug user, there were few taboos left.
Towards the end of the 70s, people sort of wanted to dance, sort of Saturday Night Fever. You know what I mean, and discos, and all this had started happening. You could go out and have a good time, and people were still generally getting pissed. Everybody smoked weed, everybody, and most did pills, speed. Cocaine was just little splutters. It was party time.
Drugs were always accessible to the big spenders and the clubs. But for disenchanted kids, there was no cheap way of escape.
Things started changing in '78. And that's when Brown started coming in. There was this whisper that, it's on its way. And it was like a wicked westerly wind coming in. Times are changing. I was in a flat with a group of friends. I was 15. It's just loads of smoke and foil and tubes of silver cigarettes, I thought they were at first. And one particular person sat down and was going like this. Like that. Gouching, as it's called now. I didn't know what it was then. And I just thought, I said, well, I want a bit of this. And she run it for me. I think 3 times, and she just sort of suck in, hold it as long as possible, blurt out, and that's when I started to feel sick. Rushed to the toilet and spewed my guts up, and afterwards I felt wicked.
Word of Brown's powerful effects began to spread. Only those already into drugs knew what it really was.
I couldn't afford cocaine. I'd been in a fast lane, really running. And your brakes fail. And shit hits the fan. Then it was all your anxiety. Well, I've just tried some of this. Wow. Heroin. Yeah, you can smoke this. You can smoke it. Yeah. There's an excitement in that, It wasn't a dirty needle that, everybody's frightened of needles. Brown was that nuclear explosion. Because in beautiful light, give it me.
The taboo of injecting drugs had limited heroin's appeal. With brown heroin, the stigma was removed. It came from the Golden Crescent of Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. In 1979, the Shah of Iran was overthrown in a people's revolution. His followers were forced to flee the country, but their assets were frozen and they could not export any currency. Some were so desperate to find a way out, they changed their money into heroin and smuggled it into the West.
There was a great desire to bring heroin out of Iran to this country in order to earn Western capital. There were very often students or people alleging to be students, and also the setup was such that the Iranians themselves were marketing the product in the streets of London. It was almost like dealing with kamikaze runs off of those flights, so that we were bound to get success. But of course, any success by the customs is countered by the smugglers always, and they got more sophisticated, and they used better methods of concealment.
Heroin poured into Britain. The effect on the streets was to cut the cost by a half. For the first time, school children could afford heroin.
I was doing it perhaps twice a day, so, you know, that didn't take long. I didn't realise at first. I knew that it was an addictive drug, but I started just before I was 16, you know, so I wasn't really thinking too seriously about it or how long it would take or anything. I just found myself really withdrawing.
I knew it was hard, but it was smoking, so it seemed like you smoke a fag, smoke a joint. And people that smoke it don't have habits, but I found out that, you know, that's not true. I loved heroin until I got none, like any drug. And then this demon, just crawled. You know, I can remember my first turkey starting, you know, and I thought, oh, that's enough of that. You know what I mean? I've got to function. You know, I've got to go out and stuff like that. And then I'm going out and it's like, hello, where are you? I'm here. Why aren't you with me today? I've had a fucking enough. You what? You've had enough? Take this. Oh, fucking hell. Oh, shit, what the fuck's this? There's screaming demons inside me going, ah, you bastard. You think you can fucking let me down? And that's when you know you're an addict. It might take you a long time to get to believe that. You put it down to having the flu at first. Oh, I've got the flu. You don't put it down to the drugs. The last thing, you'll put it down to everything else but the drug. Then I thought, fuck it, I'm gonna die. If I don't get this, I'm gonna fuck it. What the fuck's this? You know, no matter what I did, the pain, like, oh, arthritis, oh, times 10, ah, you know, I fucking had to get it. Turned up, smile off the dealer.
By the early 80s, most cities in Britain had a heroin problem. Thousands of inner-city teenagers were unwittingly being drawn in. They had little idea of the consequences of smoking brown. When they realized, it was too late. Heroin was taking control of their lives.
By the time I had a habit, it was not a very big one, 10, 15, 20 pounds a day. But I still had to find that money. And at that time I wasn't working. So the options basically were to go out and rob or steal, or get involved in selling.
This was before mobile phones came out, 83 or so. The dealers then in that area were all meeting in places like parks at, say, 10 past the hour and 5 to or something, whatever time. Perhaps they'd send a young kid along to the park or to the train station, and he wouldn't know what was going on, but he would have a message for whoever was sitting on this bench, or, well, it wasn't one person, there were maybe 20 people there.
And the dealers were saying, "Good morning, I've got no money, go and get some. You order shit, you do shit, go get it." You know what I mean? "But I need it, oh fucking hell," because they were getting physical. Do you know what I mean?
There would be, at times when there were droughts, or perhaps their dealer wasn't available, or he had run out and they were looking elsewhere. Outside these flats would at times be perhaps 50 people lying around on the grass, sitting all over the park and vomiting and, just being ill.
A lot of people would think, well, why would you carry on taking a drug that made you sick? But I mean, when you grew up as working class youth, drinking cider, drinking strong alcohol, you're brought up on being sick. And it was very cheap, £5 a bag, £40 a gram. So if you think about it, well, what would £5 buy you? 4 or 5 pints in a pub, 8 cans if you carried it out. So in terms of euphoria per penny invested, irrespective of the tragedy that lay behind it at that moment in time, in terms of the immediacy of it, it just worked.
In run-down areas like Moss Side and Hume in Manchester, the epidemic was spreading. But the signs were not immediately obvious.
We began to see, as they came into our parish centre at night for a young people's disco, you'd suddenly realise that one of these young people who'd been playing football for me, who was quite a fit guy maybe in his time, was absolutely zonked out. And it didn't seem to be the sort of zonked out that you get from drink. And they'd be out for the count, basically. And somebody would say, "It's nothing to do with alcohol. This is heroin. This guy is now on heroin."
The skag kids, as they became known, started to commit what we then classed as the junkie burglary, the junkie break. And this group of people, in order to get the money for the brown smoking heroin, would go out and commit what in police parlance was acquisitive crime.
People had no fear. Spider-Men. They all thought they were invisible. You just see someone going up a drain pipe while they were in, going through the toilet and coming out with a fucking video. You know what I mean? Or a pot of gold, or a jewellery box, or anything. You know what I mean? It was just, and blatant. Knock on your door. "Oh, sorry, mate, I must have the wrong house. I just thought, is next door?" "No, they're out." "Oh, I did, all right then." And then the next door's missing. You know what I mean? Front door's off and they're in. But nobody knew the characteristics of a user then.
A major survey on heroin addiction has revealed that the extent of the problem in Britain could be far more serious than previously suspected. The survey, carried out in the Wirral area of northwest England, shows a 50-fold increase in the number of heroin.
As the crime rate soared, the government commissioned a survey in Merseyside to assess the impact of heroin.
The main thing we found was the numbers. We were talking about completely new levels of heroin use that we hadn't seen before. So that on Merseyside we maybe got to 10 or 11,000 young adult heroin users by the mid-80s, from, I don't know, a handful, 100 or something.
On the worst affected estates, 1 in 4 young men were showing signs of addiction.
They were unemployed, undereducated, they lived in poor housing in the poorest areas. And it was the same profile in the other cities that were affected during the 1980s. And that was the first time we'd seen that link between poverty and problematic heroin use.
And these were not rich bohemians. You know, this is not latter-day William Burroughs sat there. You know, these are not young Byron-esque figures, you know, who've been reading too much Sylvia Plath. You know, these are people who, you know, they can barely read and write, a lot of them, God bless them. But, you know, like, so introduce them to a drug which is the boss of all drugs, you know, and they realised they'd answered problems they didn't even know they had.
You've had every name of every pusher and at least 2 sweets FA.
Yeah. That all these squads have had considerable success. They have kept observations on the people that you've given us information on.
By 1985, the problem had become so acute, the government was coming under pressure to act.
These are killing our kids.
Never tried to go? What? Heroin? Of course. Yeah? Why not? Don't want to be an addict, do I? Nah.
Ads were commissioned to target youngsters who might be tempted to try heroin for the first time.
What's up, Smithy? Seen Joey? I've got a bit of a cold. You know, need some stuff. Come in.
Whatever anyone says, heroin really does screw you up.
You want to come? Nah, thanks.
For those who already had a habit, they were about to take a desperate turn.
I was smoking the heroin on the foil, and I came to a point really when I was having to smoke quite a lot of heroin just to keep myself stable, keep myself normal rather than being stoned, and I wasn't really getting much of an effect off it anyway.
I'd heard for a few months that you only needed perhaps 1/3 of the same amount, you know, of the same drug to achieve the same effect. So this was the reason I went into injecting for a while. I was frightened of injecting myself. I couldn't do that. You know, somebody else had to do it for me. And the first time, it was, as I say, only. I don't even think it was 1/3 of what I usually smoked, and I almost OD'd. You know, the effect was so strong.
The old feeling when I first started to use came back again. I was very stoned, very dreamy, and kind of wrapped up in cotton wool again.
In one way it was pain, in another way it was relief, actually getting a pin and putting it inside you. You know, or getting someone to do it for you. Because it's a form of self-mutilation. Crying for help. You know, that actual dig is a cry for help. And that became part of it. You know, the works.
The last taboo was gone. At the time, no one realized the disastrous consequences. By the mid-80s, a large number of heroin addicts had become HIV positive. Fear of AIDS swept through the country. For the first time, Middle England was forced to confront the reality of the heroin epidemic. When free needles were given out to addicts, no one complained. Although the spread of AIDS was controlled, the use of brown heroin continued. New users were still being drawn to the drug. But Britain's heroin problem would be eclipsed by the arrival of a drug sensation that would sweep the nation. During the mid-80s, a new drug appeared on the scene. In the early days, no one was quite sure how to use it.
We'd all go back around someone's house and sit in the bath with crash helmets on, or just do something really, really silly and giggle and laugh, or even just all go shopping. You know, it was just a very nice, hazy, warm feeling the next day as well. And in America at the time, it was very easy to get. It was legal, used in marriage guidance, counselling, that sort of stuff. So we brought some back with us. And people had started to hear about it, so we threw this big party in a studio and just said, what should we call it? We'll have a sort of intimate, nice little party, and we called it the Hug Club, basically, because we'd been hugging all the time on this stuff.
The drug was ecstasy, a synthetic pill which bestowed overwhelming feelings of warmth and kindness. In New York, it was being taken at the private parties of the art and fashion world. In London, it was only available if you knew the right people.
We had these little rooms with loads of cushions and things hanging from the ceilings, and put some wigs in there or silly little glasses and big noses, and people would just go in and you'd just be laughing and cuddling and holding each other. And we turned around, I looked and I just said, oh, God knows what's going to happen when people do find out about this, because this is just too much fun, too good to be true.
Elsewhere in London, the delights of ecstasy were being explored in a different way.
At the time, if we were turning someone onto ecstasy, we used to very much prepare the space and bath them and get that sense of purification and everything, so that people got really relaxed and really comfortable. And when he comes on, if it's really goody, initially you want to lie down. It makes you very kind of and feel a bit like, a little bit kind of woozy, and you just kind of want to cuddle up like you would to a mother. Everybody that was there had done things beforehand, you know, whether it was being rolfed or they'd done transactional analysis, so they were ready to be opened, and it's quite an experience when you get a lot of people.
And we'd have wrappers, which are like the things Africans put around their waist, and we used to have 10 or 12 of them we used to take wherever we went. And so, you know, wrappers would fall off, or, you know, they're not much of a barrier, you know, with people, and
so it was just little bits and pieces that started off of people crossing the line.
And then someone would go in the middle and everyone would do things to them, you know.
One in the middle.
One in the middle and everyone around the sides.
Just to be, you know, like, not in a kind of a pornographic way, but just in a kind of that experience. I mean, what one of them felt like he'd like to have everybody just one after the other be in the middle and be made to come by all the others, not like really screwing or like, not like penetrative sex or going off separate, but by just having these communal experiences.
We'd been doing these parties for a while, and like I say, they were quite elite, very secret. You know, people didn't really know about them unless they were in the know. And then one night I'd heard about this club in South London called Shoom, and I said, come on, let's go and see what this is about. And we'd heard that there was some people from Ibiza, and that they were having ecstasy parties there as well. So we said, well, we've got to try this. Someone else is doing one.
Once again, a niche drug was about to enter the mass market. A small group of London DJs started clubs like Shum, which created a new ecstasy experience.
Walking into Shum was, I remember the first time walking into this cloud of smoke and strobe lights and naked, sweaty bodies, and it was just fantastic.
I look back and realised I was not only dancing, but slap bang in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by loads of people. I had absolutely no idea how long I'd been there, and we were all dancing and grinning and having a fantastic time. I thought, Christ, this really is phenomenal, and it was so much fun.
We'd never really danced on ecstasy. We'd just laid around on the floor giggling, and it was a whole fresh way of looking at it. I didn't think ecstasy was about that. I thought ecstasy was much cozier, and it was suddenly, wow, this is good.
People who you'd never have seen out on the dance floor, all of a sudden, when they hadn't taken ecstasy, were actually dancing. Or this other side of them was coming out, you know. Whereas they'd normally been at the bar getting drunk, you know, that they were actually, you know, more interested in being out on the dance floor and having a good dance, and they were leaning up at the bar, you know, looking at the other people doing it.
It was a liberator, really, an anti-British pill.
The craze began in the summer of '87 in Ibiza. The hardcore all-night clubbing scene was fueled on ecstasy. This was a new experience for DJ Nicky Holloway.
Every year there always has been little mob of people that go out to Ibiza and spend the summer there. You might as well be skint on a beach in the sun than being skinned in a city anywhere in England. In 1987, you sort of you came over here, and there was this new thing that had been discovered by the regulars on the island, the people who came here to stay the whole summer. Not the people on holiday. The people on holiday didn't know where to go. They stayed around the bay. They stayed in the town where the tourist places told them to go. But the people who worked here and stayed here the whole summer, they knew about something else, and that something else was, ecstasy. I'd never taken a single, drug in my life. I was so anti. I was so like, no way. Ooh, drugs, me, no. And I sort of just saw how much fun my friends were having. And I tried it, and it was like you'd fallen into something that you never knew was there. We'd had these pills, and all of a sudden, it was like, ooh, it went a bit pear-shaped. And it was, we knew then, hang on a minute, something's happening here. It was just, I can remember cuddling the people in the car going, we like this is good, must do this, ooh, And we drove in this, and it was almost like, I don't know, it was we'd found paradise.
One more time, come on, put your hands together, beats working!
I remember when we went back to the villa, we were all standing in the pool, like, all loved up, and I can remember, saying, yeah, but, we won't do this, we'll save this for special occasions, don't tell everyone. We don't want everybody knowing about this, this will be our thing. And all of a sudden, every night was a special occasion.
Back in Britain, the secret was out. In just 2 summers, the age of outdoor raves had arrived.
Anyone who could put on a party in the open air, like the Ibiza clubs, which was everyone's aim, was always to get something, something great and happy and free. And I really do believe the rave started from that same sort of sense of optimism. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could have a party outside? Wouldn't it be great if we had a massive party outside?
Ecstasy did give you that feeling like you want to be native and you want to get on a hill and dance at the moon and take your clothes off and be tribal. So I think it captured that, and that's why it captured that particular generation.
Everything starts with an E. You got Kama Sutra, right foot full of flames. Let's go, let's go.
I think the fact that you couldn't do anything after 3 o'clock was really getting to piss people off at the time, because if you were dancing and if you were buzzing, you really wanted to carry on, and there was just nowhere you could go.
Go out on a Friday, go out on a Thursday, go out on a Wednesday, and just stay out for as long as humanly possible. I disappeared. So did everyone I knew. We just lived off food from service stations, sort of grazing up and down motorways.
Phone up, you'd find the addresses, and you were just determined that you were going to have a damn good time when you were there, and no one was going to stop you. You felt that it was the right to party, basically.
The ravers refused to believe that something which was so much fun could be bad for you. Parents were worried their children were out all night taking Class A drugs, and local residents were angry at their lack of sleep. Something had to give.
As we got to the spring of '89, we didn't really know what was happening. What we did know was the M25 was becoming something of a car park for young people without us realising what the activity was.
Once you'd taken an E, you almost felt like you had some kind of bond with anyone that also had done it. If to say, don't tell anyone. It was always like, you're in the club sort of thing. I don't think the police really knew what was going on at the time. They were sort of stood back in amazement because there was no one causing any trouble. They were just having fun.
The surveillance that was undertaken by us in the first place revealed that drugs were coming onto the scene liberally. you're really now beginning to get some measure of what you're up against. And we pursued that. We diverted them off with bogus messages. Sunrise used to put out that they were going somewhere on their bogus radios off the top of the buildings in East London, and we got our own radio system, and we used to send them to Colchester and all over the country, which the police down there weren't very pleased with us, but it got it off our patch, you know.
Yeah. We became quite good at that, didn't we, as I remember.
We were rebels, you know what I mean? It sounds silly, but there was nothing better than being told, you know, for a police thing that you can't, you've got to turn your car around, and parking out, climbing over the fence, and with your record box, and climbing through the fence, and getting onto the stage, and then starting to play to 15,000 people. I mean, that's a buzz. You know, that's like, you know, you're like, it's the naughtiness of it was half the fun.
And you can imagine thousands of people coming from all directions. We just hadn't got the resources to cope with it. Once they're in situ, they'd beaten us effectively.
The only way of stopping the raves was to fine the organisers. As the fines increased, the raves died out.
More acid house parties means more aggravation for local communities, more risk of a major accident to those attending. And that is a matter I hope we never have to debate in this house.
But the change in the law would not stop the rise of the love drug, which was about to have one unexpected social benefit. Ecstasy would iron out hatred and bond together the most unlikely factions.
I think he killed football violence. You know, like we used to go and be running around looking for it. Whereas as soon as everybody started doing pills, the aggression had just been numbed. So you weren't doing that pack animal shit, because you were more at one with your inner self.
One great thing about the loved up experience, and that was that you could sneak into the corner of a club and have a quick snog and a grope with a football hooligan or a straight boy that had never kind of messed about before. It did kind of liberate quite a lot of kind of sexual tension in a way.
The first time somebody gave me a tab of ecstasy, it was a club in Manchester called Conspiracies. Now, take into consideration, at this time, you know, as I said, if you know, you wore certain clothes, you stood out. And so you didn't really go out of your own town. And Manchester was a complete no-go area for a Leeds fan because, you know, you just the hatred was there. It's the old Yorkshire, Lancashire and Manual Leeds. It's just like... And I remember we went to Conspiracies and said, "Oh, you've got to come to Conspiracies, man. It's a kicking club and everything." Like, yeah, and I'm not sure, though. In the end, I went with about 4 or 5 of these friends of mine and they knew people in Manchester. Said, no, it's cool. Went in there, and it was just, as I walked in, I'll never forget it. There was this, like, complete and horrible, typical, all right there, kid, manca, hey, mate, hey. And he was about 15 stone. He'd got tattoos on his neck. You know what I mean? A big cross or something here on his forehead. A real horrible bastard. And he'd got some like t-shirt on it, just soaked in sweat. Walked down through the doors, and as soon as I got in, just this guy said, "All right there, mate, hey, come here, lad. Get on a dove, man, have a dove. They're lovely, eh?" And I'm like, who is this sweaty monster? And I'm like, you know, if I'd have seen him any other time, I'd have seen me, what I was dressed with, you know, it'd have been, come on then, you think it, you know what I mean? And it was like, it would hug me, and I'm thinking, fucking hell.
Ecstasy had made a bizarre journey to the football terraces, from New York fashion and the beaches of Ibiza. And it was not the only drug to cross social boundaries at the end of the 80s. Cocaine, once confined to the film and music industry, was about to reach a wider circle.
When I started first dealing drugs, people would come around my flat and it was like a club. And I lived by Hampstead Heath, and we would party, and we'd go out on the Heath and party. All of a sudden, around the 80s, there seemed to be a new clientele. They were no longer the long-haired, excessive muso crowd. It was now people that were working for a living, working very hard in the city. And what I found was they were working very hard and playing very hard. And it was all part of this new idea of get rich quick, I guess.
There was one occasion when a band I was in was playing for some rich kids. You know, they were all in banking. You know, they were Thatcherite high achievers, the kind of people who were supposedly making this country great. And let me tell you, they were doing more fucking hard drugs, more cocaine than I've ever seen backstage in any rock and roll band's dressing room.
Cocaine really did for me everything that I couldn't do for myself. It gave me confidence, it made me feel good about myself, which I hadn't done before that, and it made me feel powerful.
Cocaine was just fast. It was in. You know, I mean, minutes. 10 minutes, you could feel the effects of cocaine in your body. It was like, yeah, right, I can get it done.
It's so insidious, it's so cunning, because it's telling you all the time that you're okay.
Your body was excited, and you could push your body to limits that it wouldn't normally do. And you know you're tired, but you wasn't tired. You know you should be dropping, but you wasn't dropping. You was like taking it to the limit, you know, the edge of the universe, and holding on. Look at me, man.
And that's what I believe people in the city wanted to do, get higher and higher. And I believe many of them got the same buzz out of work as they did out of cocaine. I mean, there'd be certain people and they'd phone me up and they'd say, can you bring some cocaine over to the office? And I really didn't like to do that, but they were good customers. So they'd, and they'd normally buy for a few of their friends as well. So I'd deliver a quarter of an ounce, half an ounce, and then a couple of hours later they'd phone me up again, can you deliver more? So some of them were using quite astronomical amounts, and I believe it fed their egos as well to be able to say, hey, you know, I'm tooting 4 grams a day, man, and still standing and still doing $1 million deals.
They'd be talking to a client. Everything was done on a phone. They never met anybody. You know what I mean? So they could be talking to the fucking air for all I knew. And they'd be like, yes, hang on, darling. You know what I mean? They all turn thespian. Oh, yes, yes, well, I faxed that through to you. Fax? What the fuck's that? You know, it's quicker than the post. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and did you get the details? Yes. Well, section 4, paragraph 6, it says this, yes. And, oh, hang on, the line's breaking up, Do us a bit of that, will you? And I'd be cutting up for them and all that. Yeah, yes, I understand. Oh, it's a terrible line, yes. Anyway, we'll start the deal. Thank you, 12 grand. Excellent. Got the bastard. Oh, come on. And that's what it was like. They were living a fairy tale.
Seemed like a never-ending, very happy movie, if you like, where with lots of happy endings. Of course, it wasn't like that at all. I wasn't to know what was to come. When I first started using cocaine, I would chop the cocaine up very nicely and make these really nice lines, usually quite big ones, and just take a lot of care over chopping them and making them exactly the same length, except for my mum, which was always bigger than everyone else's, of course. After a few years, I never chopped it. I just used to put the packet under my nose and sniff it, and the rocks would fall out, and it didn't matter. I just wanted to get it up there quickly. Cocaine led me to have terrible nosebleeds, and my nose just collapsed. I always remember something hanging down in the back of my throat. To this day, I don't know what happened, but oh, it was horrible, and I thought my face was going to collapse, and I was very paranoid, and I didn't know what was going on, but it got to a stage that every time I snorted, my nose just poured with blood, and it really hurt. And it got to a stage I just couldn't do it any longer. I just couldn't do it. the pain outweighed the pleasure. So I found other ways to take it.
Snorting cocaine wasn't enough for those in search of the ultimate high. Dealers discovered they could make 3 times as much money by removing impurities from the powder to produce a pure rock of smokable cocaine. It was named after the noise it made when cooked in the microwave.
When eventually crack came in, one was able to buy it on their street corner, if you like, and it was already marketed. It was already waiting to be put on a pipe. It was wonderful marketing, great presentation, instant. Just buy it, already made.
Oh God, crack. It's like an unbelievable high. The first time you take it, it's like whoosh, you're up there.
I can remember thinking that I'm never going to snort that stuff again, I'm always going to smoke it.
It's like, oh, you're up, you're wired. Your eyes are like that, and it's really intense.
It's almost orgasmic, and it is the most Moorish substance I've ever encountered, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
You just keep wanting to get back to that first rush, and you never quite get there.
The hit from crack was short and intense, so users were soon back for more.
So it would be like a revolving door. It would be off to score, smoke it, off to score, smoke it. Instead of buying a load of rocks at once, it would be one at a time, and back forwards, back forwards, back forwards.
I hate to say that I was spending probably something like minimum of 100, probably £300 a day.
The worst I got was £250 habit a day.
I mean, I lost my work, I lost my old lady at the time, and the kids, the car, the flat, the country cottage, my business, everything. I mean, when I say I lost everything, you know, everything went out the window.
Because people mistakenly thought crack was like cocaine, they were caught unawares by its addictive power. But crack never had the glamour of cocaine. It would always be seen as a junkie drug.
In this postmodern society where consumption forms your identity, then cocaine is literally the cherry on the cake. It's the champagne cork that pops. Crack cocaine, however, which is exactly the same substance pharmacologically, culturally changes completely. It's about consumption patterns, it's about identity, it's about labels. It's seen to be scummy.
What we're finding now is crack cocaine is associated with those communities where we used to have the heroin users, with the sex industry, and with people who are basically pretty heavy-end drug users, that crack cocaine has found the same audience that heroin did. So the early 90s we started to see crack arrive in the UK, but it's never got big time like heroin, so that it's not being particularly well researched or particularly well understood.
The full extent of recreational drug use in 90s Britain was not appreciated until the death of a young girl prompted a national outcry. When Leah Betts died as a result of taking ecstasy, nationwide surveys were carried out. They revealed that 1 million ecstasy pills were taken every weekend.
I actually took my first ecstasy in a club a week after she died, and I was very scared at the time. But that was part of the excitement at the time, exploring and just trusting that I would be okay.
Most of my friends have taken ecstasy and they're fine. It hasn't deterred me at all.
There's always going to be a chance that it could go wrong. And it's a risk that I take and loads of other people take, but we all take risks every day.
This year, a survey of schools in the northwest of England showed that for the first time, more young people have taken drugs than haven't. They are starting earlier and being offered a wider choice.
Basically, drugs are available in all the social spaces that young people move in now. The bus, the train, the pub, the club, the school corridor. And there's now enormous availability at pocket money price. And young people see some of those as street drugs, as they've just been there since they've grown up. When they were 12 or 13, people started talking about drugs. They've got friends that have tried drugs. They're in a social situation, someone passed them a spliff round. They take it, they enjoy it, and they move on like that through their social settings. It's not peer pressure. It's basically a cultural shift whereby this generation, and probably the generation behind them, believe that you can take drugs relatively safely.
Drugs I take today are ecstasy and cocaine, acid, and not so much speed anymore, and Dexies.
Ecstasy and speed is certainly readily available in clubs and gigs and festivals.
If I go clubbing, I generally don't take speed because I don't actually like it. I don't think it's a very nice drug for enjoying yourself on. I think it's great for working with.
If you want to go and dance all night till 8 o'clock in the morning and carry on all day Sunday, you'll do speed, perhaps mix it with a bit of ecstasy as well.
But yeah, I might do a bit of acid mixed with a bit of ecstasy to go clubbing and then help enhance the feelings that I have that night. Or I might do a quarter of a trip with a quiet little gathering of friends.
If we're going up to a dressy-up club, a smart club, a glam club, I tend to do coke because it makes you feel cocky and you walk out feeling like the dog's bollocks, and it just makes you feel great.
There is now a new heroin epidemic in Britain. The fear is that young people who feel in control of recreational drugs might think they can cope with anything, even the most dangerous addictive drugs.
If you go to a certain club, you will find certain drugs, but I don't think if you take ecstasy or cocaine, it will lead on to something bigger. I mean, it's not going to lead on to taking crack or heroin or anything.
As far as I'm concerned, crack and heroin are two... It's just really dark and seedy, and it's the dregs, man. I'm not into it at all.
No, I'd never ever try crack, because I've seen what it's done to some of my friends, and it's really messed them up.
Anthony Meller, who fought off heroin addiction 12 years ago, is not so convinced that these boundaries will remain intact. Today, he is a volunteer who helps heroin and crack addicts. He fears he will be seeing many more people like Rogers, whose first brush with Brown led to a 17-year habit.
You all right? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm in the environment of heroin every day now. People with crack cocaine habits, heroin habits.
How have you been?
It's been difficult. People coming in, the stinking of it, they're talking about it.
On your case. Breathe in and out.
You've got children now that know no difference.
More then.
The children that and adults that are into heroin now are more affluent. Some of them are self-employed, from private school teachers to, you know, street level, young children. When I say young, 15, 17. Like that, but it's like a pair of denim jeans. It don't come with a class or a barrier. It's everywhere.
In the last half-century, there has been a remarkable shift in attitude. In the 50s, drug users were outsiders, the dregs of society. Today, few young people have never had contact with drugs. Perhaps now it's the ones who say no who feel they are the outsiders.
Uncover the truth about drugs, including the effects of their use, with a frank and free Channel 4 booklet. To order, send a stamped addressed envelope to the ABC of Drugs, P.O. Box 4000, Manchester M60, 3LL.